In recent years, the MCU's version of Wanda Maximoff has crept up to become one of the most powerful beings in the verse. But not only has her power increased since her on-screen debut, but her popularity too, giving rise to the infamous Wanda stans. The group tends to exaggerate how powerful she is, claiming that she is the most powerful being the MCU has ever seen, which is not exactly the truth. On the flip side, there's people heavily downplaying her power, typically in response to the aforementioned Wanda stans. And there's definitely a conversation to be had on whether or not a fanbase can ruin a character or media, but that can be a video of its own some other time. But with people claiming that she's easily universal to multiversal for pretty wacky reasons, or no reason at all, I decided to lay these claims to rest and explain to you why the MCU's Scarlet Witch is not as strong as you think. Before we continue, I want to point out that I'll only be taking feats from the movies and shows. No comics will be considered whatsoever. So if you want to say Wanda's powerful because she said no more mutants in the House of M, then all the power to you. But if we didn't see her do it on screen, then it never happened. So we can start from the very beginning and work our way to where we are now. If you disagree with my overall point, stick around till the end. I try to cover all of our bases. Wanda's first real appearance is in Avengers 2, where she and Quicksilver initially help Ultron kill the Avengers. Although this is the weakest we'll ever see her, she establishes herself as a powerful mind controller, giving vivid hallucinations to most of the Avengers, even Thor. She also sends Bruce on a rampage as the Hulk, but Bruce's split mind most likely makes him more susceptible to her mind attacks. She's also able to easily undo the effects of the Mind Stone since her own powers come from it or were at least amplified by it. But the most notable aspect of her mind powers are the sheer scale, as she was able to control the minds of the Sokovian people to get them to safety on her very first outing as an Avenger. In terms of physicals, she can pretty easily throw people around and blast Ultron pods apart, rip a weakened Ultron's heart out of his chest, and eventually stop a derailed train from crashing by the wheels. We also see how Wanda's power increases when she's distressed, as she completely disintegrates every Ultron bots in the immediate area when she senses that her brother died. Unfortunately, Wanda has a durability issue that she never really got rid of. She was one-shot by an electrical arrow, had her defenses broken by a few blasts from Ultron bots, and would have died had she stayed on Sokovia. Despite being part of the Civil War, Wanda doesn't have much direct scaling to the other heroes. She easily dispatches some no-name grunts and removes gas from a building, but she fails to hold down the explosion Crossbones set off, leading to the events in the movie. Later on, she quickly senses and reacts to Hawkeye sneaking up behind her and sends Vision deep underground. Granted, he's not fighting back, at all here. During the airport fight, she resorts to throwing objects and the other heroes around instead of getting into any up-close altercations. Her most impressive feat is catching part of a traffic control tower so Bucky and Steve can get through. That is before dropping it when she was one-shot by War Machine's sonic waves. This, like in the first movie, did a visible number on her. Infinity War and Endgame is where things really ramp up, however. But not at first. She and Vision get jumped by Proxima Midnight and Corvus Glaive, the weakest of the children of Thanos. Vision is incapacitated immediately, leaving Wanda to fight the others. She does a pretty decent job at holding her own, but struggles to keep up with those who are superior combatants. She does survive a few direct blasts and a pretty hefty fall, but would have possibly just died here had Cap and Black Widow not shown up when they did, where they easily dispatched the two. Later, she saves Black Widow and Okoye with a grand entrance where she casually lifts 5 Threshers out of the way and kills multiple Outriders in the process, now making this her best lifting feat so far. Proxima Midnight still puts the work in on her after this though, further emphasizing how she struggles with physically combative opponents. Like, she would have just straight up died here without Black Widow. But in order to save the universe, she was able to hold back Thanos in time for her to destroy the Mind Stone, one of the most powerful objects in the universe. But as Vision mentioned, Wanda was most likely able to destroy the Mind Stone due to her powers being linked to it, not through sheer force. This along with Thanos walking through Wanda's attack only to deliver his melancholy line in reverse time.
Today I lost more than you can know. But now is no time to mourn.
Knowing full well the entire time that whatever Wanda was planning wouldn't be able to stop him, similar to how he looked at Steve when he tried to slow him down. Then she's taken out with a single backhand and is killed by the snap. Wanda gets hers back in Endgame though. When she's revived by the Hulk, she immediately goes to kill Thanos.
I don't even know who you are.
You will.
He underestimates her and gets done in pretty handily. She even destroys his sword made out of Uru metal in the process, which is the same material Thor's hammer is made out of. Thanos in that moment fears for his life and fires at the battlefield where Wanda's shortly knocked out by a shockwave of a nearby explosion. I've seen people downplay this and say Thanos was tired after fighting for so long and even his sword was worn down after clashing with Thor's hammer and axe. And he didn't expect her to be as powerful as she was and yada yada. And sure, I'm sure it's true to some extent, but how tired was Thanos isn't exactly quantifiable. So similar to how Thor almost killed him in Infinity War, he was caught off guard by someone much more powerful than he expected, where he reacted in a way that almost got him killed. But it's still Thanos, the feat is impressive nonetheless. It's all she really does in the movie except for her girls get it done entrance and kinda steers the Leviathan out the way. After the events in the last two movies, Wanda was left broken both mentally and emotionally. WandaVision highlights Wanda's ability to warp reality and her witch powers that she didn't know she had. She uses CMBR, which is radiation let off by the Big Bang, to literally rewrite reality to her own choosing. She turns the entire town of Westview to an old-timey setting of a reality show to go along with her own little fantasy. She revives Vision, makes the world black and white, and changes the appearance of the town to match the 50s setting, like people's clothes, the cars, even their dialect. As the season progresses, so does the setting, with the clothes, cars, and dialect evolving right alongside it, even creating living children. The minds of everyone already in Westview and anyone who finds himself inside are immediately taken over by Wanda's need for a happy life, almost unconsciously. These people are unwilling participants of Wanda's facade, and they feel the mental anguish Wanda's been through. Although it isn't intentional, it stands to reason that Wanda would be able to do this to anyone without the mental fortitude to withstand it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Some characters are able to shrug off Wanda's mind control, like Rambo after gaining her powers, or Agatha before losing her powers. She's also not immune to other sources of witchcraft. She's left completely powerless when Agatha places runes in the basement, and also had her powers and life force absorbed by Agatha, only defeating her by outsmarting her when she places runes around the walls of Westview. Nothing much in terms of speed. She does blast fake Pietro, who should have the speed of Quicksilver, but he wasn't even moving. And she quickly appears behind Agatha, but it's likely this is how she was perceived and not how fast she was actually moving. And of course, the old lack of durability. White Vision grabbed her by the head and was about to crush it until Vision stopped him. Yet another example of Wanda would have been killed by X if Y wasn't there to save her just in time. We see that in the end of WandaVision, she takes a Darkhold for herself, corrupting her and leading us into Wanda's final outing. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is where Wanda's story ends, at least in the main 616 timeline. Wanda, now the Scarlet Witch, has been completely taken over by the Darkhold. Unhappy with her life in this universe, she became hell-bent on finding her happy ending in another. But she's incapable of traversing the multiverse. So she sends otherworldly monsters to capture someone who can, that someone being America Chavez. She fails to enter Camartage with physical force, when dozens of low-level wizards set up defenses and resorts to mind tricks to get in. She shakes off a cannonball to the body, reacts to and blocks arrows shot at her, and destroys chunks of the battlefield with her attacks. Her supervillain landing also disintegrates a man. She uses more witchy powers when brute force isn't an option, and knocks out Wong and Strange by kinda tossing them aside. America gets away, so Wanda finds her by dreamwalking, a dangerous ability she learned from the Darkhold which allows her to insert her consciousness into another version of herself. Of course, we get to her fight against the Illuminati, where Reed immediately tells her opponent about how their strongest member's power works, which we can all agree that this is, like, fucking stupid, right? But this does show us the Scarlet Witch's ability to warp reality offensively, removing Black Bolt's mouth and allowing him to essentially do himself in, then shreds Mr. Fantastic apart and pops his head while the other two watch, and tussles with Captain Carter and Captain Marvel, where Carter's able to get a few hits in before being chopped in half, and fights pretty evenly with Captain Marvel before killing her when she dropped a statue on her. Professor X is able to get into her head for a bit before the Scarlet Witch takes over and snaps his neck. The fights did leave her at least slightly weakened since we see her limp for the rest of the movie. She slowed for a considerable amount of time when Strange dropped water on her head, and later fights pretty evenly against a dead version of Strange in the final act. The souls of the damned are able to absorb her blast and hold her down for long enough for friendship to prevail, and America to control her powers and make Wanda see the error of her ways. She then lifts this large tower and drops it on herself, killing her and destroying the Darkhold in every universe. So now we have every notable feat out of the way. Unless you want me to go through and count how many Ultron bots she destroyed, we can address the first issue with the Scarlet Witch. Where the f*** did multiversal come from? I think we can all agree that Wanda has absolutely no feats that put her close to multiversal before Multiverse of Madness, remaining pretty in line with most other superpowered characters up until she got a hold of the Darkhold. And I believe there's two misconceptions surrounding multiversal. First is when Strange fears that Wanda would be able to use America's power to enslave the multiverse, seeing this as proof that the Scarlet Witch is multiversal in power. And I don't love taking character statements as evidence when feats aren't there to back it up, but it's most likely that Wanda would be able to enslave the multiverse via her mind control, similar to what she did in Westview, but on a much higher scale, but not being able to straight up destroy or create a multiverse. Still completely ignoring the existence of other superpowered characters who could resist her mind control, especially in a multiversal setting, where we'd have infinite amount of characters who could outright defeat her in a 1v1 battle. Hell, we've already seen characters more powerful than her in What If. This is simply a statement by two characters who have gone on record stating they know very little about the multiverse.
Multiverse is a concept about which we know frighteningly little.
Misconception number 2 is her destroying the Darkhold in every universe, therefore she must be multiversal. I'll quickly nip this one in the bud and say that the destruction of the Darkholds was due to the destruction of the castle where the Darkhold was first transcribed, causing a chain reaction that led to all Darkholds disappearing, not Wanda outright blowing up each and every book in every universe. Not that destroying an item in a multiverse would even put her at multiversal anyways, if she can't destroy or create the multiverse itself. Wanda can be described as a glass cannon, undeniably powerful offense with destructive blasts that blow small buildings apart, lifts giant structures, and went toe-to-toe with some of the stronger characters in the MCU. But she can't take nearly as much damage as she puts out, getting one-shot many times throughout her run. Her best durability feats unsurprisingly come from Multiverse of Madness, where she takes a cannonball and is staggered after taking a punch from America. It's hard to tell just how powerful this punch was, but it did send a shockwave around the immediate area. And this isn't a multiversal punch just because she opened up a portal to another universe, but I'd hope no one really thinks this is a Superboy Prime reality-destroying punch, but like I said, covering all of our bases. All in all, a direct hit from a heavy hitter should do her in, no issue. The almighty Speed Blitz. I made a video on the topic a while back going over this, but it's relevant here. If you can't physically keep up or perceive your opponent in a fight, there's a very low chance you can beat them. The Scarlet Witch's reaction speed has never been too impressive, speed of sound at best, but even her bullet feed is iffy since she was blocking before the bullets were even fired. Anyways, she's regularly tagged by attacks which are much slower, like how she was snuck up on and knocked down by Captain Carter. A speedster like Makari or even Captain Marvel could tag her and end the fight before she attacks. Also, this Captain Marvel is not as strong as our Captain Marvel. Killed by a fallen statue, knocked out by a Power Stone infused punch. Not the same. Or in a cross-verse matchup, the Flash, Superman, even Omni-Man could insta-kill her before the fight even started. I've seen people say her reaction time is instantaneous in the comics, which again, not even counting them. And she gets hit on multiple occasions in both the MCU and the comics, so not instant reaction time. Please stop saying otherwise. Many powerful characters can block or shrug off direct attacks from the Scarlet Witch, but what really makes her dangerous is her ability to mind control and warp reality. As I mentioned earlier, she effortlessly controls the minds of thousands of people at any given time, and possibly an entire multiverse worth of people if you want to take Strange's hyperbolic statement at face value. Meaning that anyone without some form of immunity or resistance could find themselves defeated before a fight really began. But people who can match her could be a problem, like how Professor X stalled her for long enough for America to get away, but had he fought alongside the others, he could have just used that, leaving her open to any attack. But the ability to warp reality is much more powerful. As we saw in WandaVision, she can rewrite reality on a very large scale, affecting well past the city limits of Westview, converting the entire area into the setting of her own little sitcom. The main issue with these two abilities is determining how applicable it is to a fight. We do see how deadly the latter ability is when she removes Black Bolt's mouth, and although impressive, it's the only instance of her using it offensively. Same with the mind control, as we see her use it on unsuspecting victims and normal people. Aside from those instances, she resorts to magic blasts and shields in all of her fights, so it's most likely that Wanda can't reliably use these abilities in the middle of a fight. Last but certainly least is her probability manipulation, which we've only seen once when she was a child, when she unknowingly prevented a bomb from going off. No other showings, so we can't gauge how effective it is, but she still loses fights, and the Crossbone's suicide vest still went off, so I lean towards not very effective. Now onto who can defeat her. Super easy ones out of the way immediately are Infinity Ultron and Strange Supreme. Infinity Ultron was capable of breaking through the walls of his universe to destroy others, effortlessly destroying mountains, planets, solar systems, and entire galaxies with a single attack, and defeat the Watcher, who's capable of similar feats. Strange Supreme versus Wanda seems to be pretty contentious, but comparing their feats side by side, it's really no contest. Strange saved himself from the destruction of his universe, and then went toe-to-toe with the universe-destroying Infinity Ultron. Like, he carried that entire fight, it's crazy. That same Ultron who annihilated zombie Wanda, who should at least scale to her pre-WandaVision version. He'd be able to absorb Wanda's attacks, and the Scarlet Witch has no feats where she's capable of stopping or outputting anything on his level. Dormammu rules over the Dark Dimension and was about to destroy the 616 universe. And I already stated how the Scarlet Witch doesn't come close to universal. Thanos with a full gauntlet simply has more power than the Scarlet Witch, able to shred the universe down to its last atom had he snapped his fingers. This along with the Mind and Reality Stones, Thanos has a direct counter to two of Wanda's trump cards. From here we have characters who don't easily win but definitely have some win conditions. Characters like Thor and Captain Marvel have the durability to shrug off direct attacks and have AP high enough to one-shot Wanda. Characters fast enough could blitz her and defeat her in a single attack, and powerful hand-to-hand fighters could overwhelm her. Last video of the year, and thank you so much for getting me over 1k subs, it means so much, and thank you to Hush Puppy Art for today's thumbnail. His Twitter will be down in the description, So I know this video might get a lot of flack, but I hope it's understandable, you know? Like, universal to multiversal scaling when Wanda's consistently lifting buildings and destroying walls or disintegrating people and robots. It's impressive, but not nearly at that universal level. Compared to, like, Dead by Daylight's Entity, who I talked about a few weeks ago. The Entity is snatching people from any universe, creating and destroying infinite amounts of space at all times, omnipresent, and could look into any time period. And, like, seeing what these two are capable of and trying to say that they're both on the same level is just crazy to me. Same with like Infinity, Ultron, and Strange Supreme. Like, these two are fighting and the destruction is annihilating entire galaxies, and we just don't see anything that comes close to that in terms of like Wanda's scaling. But if you completely disagree, feel free to express your thoughts down in the comments. I do read, or at least try to read, every single comment, and I try to reply to most of them. So if you have any counter arguments, leave them down below. But thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys later.